Hi there, welcome back to Spring into Math 7. I'm Mrs. Campbell, and today we're going to be doing the first part of percent increase and decrease. Let's get started. All right, so where do we see a percent of increase in the real world? Actually, you see percents of increases all over the place. Let's take a look at some of the ways, some of the places you would see it in the real world. You see an increase in prices. They go up and down. Your bank account balances, they go up and down. Your weight goes up and down. Businesses get more or less business. Even hurricanes and typhoons, all those kinds of things change very frequently. And interpreting the amount of change as a percent is oftentimes useful to understand a situation and to compare it to others. Well, that's all fine and good, but what is the percent of increase? Well, here's a great definition for you. The percent of increase is the percent that something's value increased. And again, I think that looking at an example with numbers attached to it will help it make a little bit more sense to you all. Here's our example. 2 years ago, Ming was 116 centimeters tall. She is now 132 centimeters tall. Her height increased by 16 centimeters in 2 years. 2 years ago, her little brother Charlie was only 80 centimeters tall. He has grown to 95 centimeters, almost a full meter. He grew 15 centimeters. Which one grew more? Well, the answer might appear to be evident to you really clearly, but hold on one second, let's see. Let's read this. In the beginning, wouldn't it seem obvious that Ming grew more because she grew 16 centimeters and Charlie only grew 15 centimeters? But if we consider the percent of increase, you might have a different argument. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I want you to remember that the percent of increase is the percent that something's value is being increased. So how does that apply to this problem? Let's see. So first we have to figure out what the percent of increase was in growth for both of the children. So we know that Ming grew 16 centimeters and that her original height was 116 centimeters. To find out, now we're asking the question, what percent did she increase? So we're just going to set it up as like this. The amount of centimeters increased over the original amount. And we're just going to plug those numbers in. She increased 16 centimeters. She was originally 116 centimeters. All we're going to do there is divide, and we come up with 0.138, and we turn 0.138 into a percentage, and that gives us 13.8%. So that is her percent increase in her height. So let's look at the steps I did. I've written it out here in blue just one more time to reinforce. We divide the amount of increase by the original amount and change it to a percent by multiplying by 100, or by moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. And her height increased by 13.8%. So now let's take a look at Charlie's percent of increase. His height increased by 15 centimeters, but his original height was only 95 centimeters. So if we plug the same numbers in for Charlie, which would be 15 over 95, and we divide, we get 1.158 turned into a percentage is 15.8. So even though Ming grew 1 centimeter more than Charlie, Charlie actually increased more because his percent of increase was 15.8%, while Ming's percent of increase was only 13.8. And it's important to remember that we can find any percent of increase by dividing the amount of increase by the original amount and then multiplying by 100. All right, so now let's talk about how we find a percent of decrease given the original amount and the amount of increase. So I'm going to highlight this direction here. Calculating the percent of decrease, it actually is almost the same procedure as calculating the percent of increase. The percent of decrease is the percent that a value goes down or decreases. To find the percent of decrease, we do the same thing. We simply divide the amount of decrease by the original amount and multiply by 100. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about here. Okay, so a helicopter's altitude went from 350 feet down to 38 feet. This was a difference of 312 feet. You can skip the blue note at the top there. I'll explain that in a minute. By what percent did the altitude decrease? Now we'll talk about that blue note. Notice in this question, they actually tell you what the difference is. says 350 feet to 38 feet. They do the subtraction for you in the problem. So I put, if you are not given the actual amount of the decrease, sometimes you'll have to subtract and figure out what the difference is. In this case, it's 312 feet. And all we do, same as we did with the amount of increase, we put the amount of decrease over the original amount. We get 312 over 350. Divide, we get 0.891. And we turn that into a percent, and it's 89.1%. So the percent of decrease is 89.1%. Now let's talk about using the percent of change to find a new amount. We can find the percent of change if we know an original amount and how much it either increased or decreased. At times, however, we are given the percent of increase or decrease, and we have to calculate the new amount. So let's take a look at how we can calculate this new amount. Here we go. A restaurant manager has noticed an increase in the cost of utilities of 4%. In order to pay for the increase in costs, he decides to increase his prices by 4% as well. Now, not all of the items are priced the same. The chicken platter currently costs $5.99, and the steak platter costs $7.99. So if the prices are increased by 4%, what will the new prices be? So basically what the question's asking us is if the chicken costs $5.99 and we want to increase it by 4%, what will that be? And if the steak dinner is $7.99 and we're going to increase it by 4%, what will that be? So first we're going to notice what we know. We're going to create two new amounts. We're going to create a new cost for the chicken, and we're going to have a new cost for the platter. We have the original amounts and the percents of the increases, so now we just need to calculate the amount. The first thing we need to do is calculate how much the change will be. The prices are increasing by 4%, so we have to know how much 4% is of each price, and we do that by multiplying. So I have my chicken here for $5.99. If I want to know what 4% is, I multiply it by 0.04, or 5.99 times 0.04. The price change is 24 cents. So 4% of $5.99 is 4 cents. With the steak at $7.99 times 0.04, that price change is 32 cents. So 4% of $7.99 is 32 cents. But wait, we're not done. That is just telling us what 4% is of those two platters. Now we have to add that increase to the original price. And let's read it out specifically. It says, now we know how much each platter's price is going to change. Since this is an increase, we will add the price change to the price. But if it's a decrease, we would decrease it from the price. So the previous price was $5.99 plus 24, the 4%. Now the new price of chicken will be $6.23. The steak used to be $7.99, increased by 32 cents, and it is now $8.31. All right, so let's quickly summarize. To find the new amount, you multiply the original amount by the percent of change. You add the change amount to the original amount for an increase, or you subtract the change amount from the original amount if you're looking at a decrease. All right, everyone, that just about does it for this lesson. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.